This video is sponsored by Grrt, who are fixing your lag. You may have seen the news that EA is getting sold for $55 billion, which means Apex is part of this deal because EA owns Respawn. So, what does the future of EA being sold mean for Apex, Titanfall, and even EA? Well, automatically, there's a lot of skepticism about EA being sold because of who it's being sold to. It's been purchased between a Saudi Arabian investment fund and two American investment firms. They're all split in the purchase, I guess. And most of the skepticism on social media is going to the Saudi Arabian buyers, as naturally the new owners of EA do have a lot of say over what EA does now. Originally, EA was a publicly traded company, which meant they had to share how much money they earn, how much money they spend, and investors in the company would have a say over how the company is ran. But with its new ownership, the new owners can basically do whatever they want with the company. So there could be drastic changes, or there could be literally zero changes. And that is one of the main things. A lot of people are theorizing that EA is going to collapse with its new owners, but there's a good chance we could see absolutely nothing change from the surface level. Or we could see everything change. Regarding EA getting sold, the CEO of EA, Andrew Wilson, said, "This moment is a powerful recognition of their remarkable work. Looking ahead, we'll continue to push the boundaries of entertainment, sports, and technology, unlocking new opportunities together with our partners. We will create transformative experiences to inspire generations to come. I am more energized than ever about the future we're building." And the founder of one of the companies that newly owns part of EA said, "Electronic Arts is an extraordinary company with a world-class management team and a bold vision for the future. I've admired their ability to create iconic, lasting experiences. And as someone who grew up playing their games and now enjoys them with kids, I couldn't be more excited for what's ahead." So yeah, very vague corporate speak, but I'm sure you want to know what the effect of this on Apex will be. Well, before I tell you that, we all know from time to time, Apex's and pretty much any game servers can be a bit inconsistent, no matter if your internet is good or bad. But there's actually a software to fix that. Grrt. Grrt is a software that optimizes your connection to game servers through its several features like anti-packet loss and also its ability to lower latency on cross-region play. It definitely works for me. I play with my friends in the US a lot, so I play on US East servers despite being from Europe. And when using Grrt to help connect to the US East servers, I often see an improved ping with Grrt. And Grrt is going to be especially useful for those with inconsistent and also bad connections. In the past, they've been sponsors of esports teams like TSM, and they have a link in the description and also pinned comment if you want to check them out. And my link will give you a free trial to Grrt and 60% off if you want to go through with using it after you've tested it. Thank you, viewers. Back onto the video. For Apex, the effect might be pretty good in the area of esports. We know Saudi Arabia has been a big investor in many esports, and recently they hosted some Apex esports as well. So I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw a bit more money pumped into the esport aspect of Apex. And interestingly enough, Apex might increase tourism for Saudi Arabia. You see, Saudi Arabia is trying to move away from oil to diversify their incomes a bit, and buying EA was definitely part of this, considering the public investment fund of Saudi Arabia were the ones who put money into buying out EA. So I wouldn't be surprised if Apex esports was pumped up a bit and more esports events for Apex were held in Saudi Arabia, maybe to increase tourism and attention to the country. That is kind of a theory from me, but I really wouldn't be surprised if we saw that pan out. And also for Apex, once again in my opinion, I feel like EA might look at the game with a more long-term plan now, as originally, due to the nature of EA being a publicly traded company and them having to report their earnings every single quarter of the year, they definitely had to prioritize the short-term earnings of the game over the long-term earnings. I'm pretty sure this is why they cancelled those Titanfall games, because the games wouldn't be finished for several years and EA wanted instant gratification and their earning numbers to look higher, so I think they had to focus on the short term. So now they don't have to publicly report their earnings every single quarter. It will be interesting to see if the company takes a more long-term stance and doesn't mind starting projects that might not be finished for 5 years, but will earn a lot of money after 5 years. I think the reason we've recently had a lot of aggressive monetization in Apex is because the player count went down, but EA didn't want their Apex Apex earnings to go down, so they tried to squeeze more money out of the average player to keep their earning numbers high despite the player counts dropping. But once again, this is a theory and the total opposite could happen. Like literally nobody can say for certain what's going to happen, but it's really fun to theorize about and potentially float the idea of another Titanfall game go into development. Because surely one of these new investors at EA realized people love Titanfall and it'll be worth developing a Titanfall 3 to release it in 5 years and earn a hell of a lot of money from it. Surely, right? Please, please. Although, it's not all positive, and in fact, it's far from all positive, because as pointed out by the journalist Jason Schreier, who you've definitely heard of before because he's leaked Titanfall 3 like several times I think, the EA deal is being financed with $20 billion worth of debt. And his analysis of this, as a guy who's very well informed about this type of thing, was a lot of people are understandably focused on the Saudi Arabia and Kushner part of this, but the far bigger immediate impact will come from the new private EA being on the hook for $20 billion in debt. This could mean mass layoffs, more aggressive monetization, and other big cost-cutting measures, which is never a good thing. You don't want to hear about people getting fired from their job. And a lot of people have been theorizing that BioWare as a development studio, as it is owned by EA, could be dissolved because of its recent failures. BioWare are the developers of Mass Effect and also Dragon Age, and due to the recent failures of their games that they've developed for one reason or another, a lot of people are theorizing that EA could just wash their hands of this studio because it might be burning a hole in their wallet. Paul Tassi, another very reliable journalist, did point this out, but also in the same breath pointed out that Apex has been recently underperforming as well, but overall it is still a solid performer. Honestly, Apex's player count has been doing pretty well recently, developers have been doing pretty well, and I don't think anything drastic is going to happen to Apex because it still earns a lot of money for EA. One thing I'd love to see for Apex is more funding. Like, if these companies could take over EA and inject a bit more funding into certain areas, maybe more funding into Respawn, allow them to develop more games, that would be awesome. But there's been a lot of doubt cast on this because of the 20 billion debt figure. And it does seem to be true that the new owners of EA do want to cut EA's operating costs a bit to create more revenue, because Insider Gaming reported that the ownership group is betting on AI being able to significantly cut EA's operating costs.
Hey, there's a bubble.
I'm not quite sure what I think about that one, but also, once again, we kinda just need to see what happens. But honestly, EA being sold is one of the biggest pieces of gaming news, pretty much ever. I think the only one that beats this out really is when Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard for a little bit more money. For my personal opinion, I do think we could potentially see positives out of this, with EA not having to constantly report their earnings and worry about what their short-term earnings are going to look like over their long-term earnings. But also, I think it's fair to be a bit anxious about how the new owners are going to treat EA, because easily after they obtain EA, they could do something ridiculous. I doubt they're going to do anything ridiculous, but they could. Additionally, I think for a lot of people, it's totally valid to be a bit anxious of Saudi Arabia having such a big part of EA now. And honestly, no gaming companies even close to the size of EA have been bought out by Saudi Arabian investment firms, so it's hard to draw on history to see what will happen next. So I think the main thing to take away from this is that nobody really knows what's going to happen, if it's going to be good or it's going to be bad. All we can hope for is that the current employees and culture at EA are respected and not immediately uprooted. But this is one of those times I'm going to say, make sure you subscribe, because the future is looking interesting to say the least. And once again, thank you to Grrt for sponsoring us, and you can check them out at the link in the description to also get a free trial and 60% off if you want to keep using it.